Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do, and I'll bet it can be hard work. You know what's easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowner's or renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home. Go to geico.com, get a quote, and see how much you could save. It's Geico Easy. Visit geico.com today. That's geico.com.
The Ticket.
Podcasts are brought to you in part by Lewis Jewelers, the official jeweler of The Ticket and proud partner of Michigan Athletics.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. So let me explain for a second before we bring Scott Bell on. So there is a longtime basketball scout here in the state of Michigan that has a high school basketball recruiting service named Steve Bell. And so that's where that came. I think I've slipped like that once before.
It happens.
But I, back in the day, I don't know if he still does this service or not. But back in the day, that was one of the, when you were looking for who are the next guys coming up in state, that was one of the services to look to. So that's where that came from. I do know the mayor of Michigan's Twitter. His name is Scott Bell. You can find him on Twitter at sbell021. Again, at sbell021. Scott joins us now. Scott, how you doing?
Happy to be here. Doing great. This Steve guy seems cool enough, so I'll let it slide.
Hey, man. Wow. I saw you tweeting about it as well. They were down in your neck of the woods. The Michigan women's gymnastics team won the national championship, the first national championship for Michigan athletics since 2014, only the third for a women's sport, only the seventh ever in women's gymnastics. This is rarefied air for the Michigan women's gymnastics program.
It was absolutely fantastic, and God bless those women for being able to perform in those circumstances. Because just sitting there watching, you think the tension of a big football game or a big basketball game is one thing, but these gymnasts and the slightest margin of error, like throughout, is just incredible. And you get to the fourth rotation, and you had the first two beams were a little shaky, and Oklahoma was doing great on the floor the whole time through, and they had next to no margin of error, and they're on a freaking balance beam. I can't even walk straight when it's even footing. It's a big plank of concrete, and they're on a balance beam, and to finish the way they did, have it play out on ABC and have a huge contingent watching, very, very, very cool, and just elated for that team, and for someone like Bev Plotke, who's been at the school for decades and had a lot of great teams, but never won the big one. Just a really, really cool moment.
Yeah, exceptionally cool for Bev, who, as you said, for 32 years has been fielding or putting on the floor great team after great team, 24 Big Ten championships. He finished second twice. Now getting the kind of national recognition. I think she had recognition within the sport. When you win a national championship, it sort of transcends the sport. Kind of like I'm sure you've seen some of these UCLA. I'm always seeing on Twitter, on YouTube, videos of their floor routines, and I don't follow UCLA gymnastics, but it's out there because they've been a champion and people check for that. This is a pedestal now. It feels like this is a chance for the program to be elevated beyond where it was before. I'm curious if you feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as we talk about the name, image, and likeness and things like that, like this is the type of things where these student athletes could really help build their own brand, help bring in some more money for themselves, because in gymnastics in particular, like you look at that, and yes, you'll get a couple handful of people when you count alternates that can be on an Olympic team or whatever, but that's every 4 years. There aren't many tours and stuff. So these gymnasts, yes, there's a super intense niche following within the gymnastics community, and it's a huge community down here, specifically in North Texas. But you look at an event like this where you win a national title, you should be able to capitalize on stuff like that. And I feel like this is a great example to where these women who just accomplished this great feat should be able to reap some of the benefits of that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and it's against that backdrop that I want Ira to come forward with this email that I got, because I disagree vehemently with it, and I'm going to address it more fully, not in a contentious sort of way, just to say that I disagree with this approach entirely. To each his own, but I don't think we should project our likes or dislikes on this team. And I want your reaction to this email we just got. Go ahead, Ira.
All right, so it comes in unsigned, so we won't even call the person out, but it says, hey, guys, in light of the fact that our ladies have won the national championship, I'll give you one day to celebrate on air, but please, after today, let them compete in relative anonymity. Part of the enjoyment of Saturday's accomplishment was it was pure sport. There was no talk of the transfer portal, no talk of anybody going pro, no talk of locker room dissension, no hashtags about the NCAA, and I doubt that any of the young ladies had a staged press conference with 6 hats to announce their decision of what school to attend. Heaven forbid if our ladies finish in second place next year, the last thing we need is Elrod from Belleville calling it to have Coach Plocky fired. Let's enjoy sports for what they should be, pure joy.
Relative anonymity, let them compete in. I don't think anyone in that sport wants that. Scott?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I understand some of the points our unsigned emailer was trying to get across. I certainly didn't agree with some of the tangents that went there or whatever, but the pureness of the sport or whatever, I can understand that element that's being pushed for. But yeah, no, that these people deserve a greater platform, a bigger stage, and that's what they want. They're not wanting to do this in anonymity. They're not wanting to do this for. I mean, yes, they love the sport, but they're representing the school. They want a bigger piece of the cake. They want more attention. You had members of the team tweeting #gymnastics school like 30 minutes after winning the national title. Like,
sure did.
You want to take pride in that, and they deserve that. They earned that. It's the first national title in this school in more than a half a decade. So give them a bigger platform. Give them the opportunity to celebrate. And they worked hard. They earned this, and they should get the spoils.
Yeah, and if they could be on the cover of a Wheaties box, they should be able to get the proceeds for being on the cover of a Wheaties box. I mean, they can't right
Absolutely.
now, but soon with name, image, likeness, that kind of thing will be possible, and they should be able to I mean, I don't know where you fall on name, image, likeness, Scott, but I feel like this is a vivid example of how in a non-football or basketball sport where you could see an obvious opportunity for the athletes in the sport to profit from their name, image, or likeness.
And I think name, image, and likeness is a bigger untapped potential and more important to a lot of these women athletes than your star college football player or basketball player that are inevitably going to get their endorsements, their things at the next level, because there are those opportunities beyond there. And a lot of these sports, a lot of these women's sports in particular, there isn't necessarily, at least as large of a next step to take professionally, where you can really take what you did, where you excelled amateurly, and sort of turn that into a career and make money playing that sport. So you need to give these people the opportunity to capitalize when their brand, when they're competing at the highest level, and for so many of these women athletes, that's right now. So allow them to again enjoy the spoils.
Absolutely. Talking to Scott Bell here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Scott, we saw major turnover in the personnel department for the University of Michigan last week. Out is Matt Dudek, former director of recruiting, now in, or at least soon to be in. I know his title was going to be director of player development or player personnel. I wonder if that'll change now that Dudek has gone. But Courtney Morgan comes in. I'm curious your reaction to that. That's the first part. The second part, you being the mayor of Michigan Twitter, can maybe explain to me why so many fans were. I mean, I knew that Matt Dudek had some back and forth with some Michigan fans, but the reaction that I saw on Twitter, I was ill prepared to see the amount of basically breakdancing about his departure and shots on his way out the door. And I'm curious if you could explain where that comes from.
Yeah, it's weird. When it happened, I more or less, I think I tweeted something out saying, "Hey, seeing this, I understand the move. I think there were some recruiting tweaks and recalibrations that probably needed to be made within the program, and it sounds like Courtney Morgan's a great person to be addressing those. But that aside, the celebration or almost the dancing on Dudek's grave was just a really weird energy to me. I think he's a convenient sort of scapegoat, someone that you can blame and sort of remove yourself from the reality of, hey, this is the problems going on with this program are a lot deeper than a recruiting coordinator. And so many of the things that people are complaining about are things that Dudek wasn't really even responsible for. But I think the fact that he was sort of willing to hop onto Twitter and go back and forth with some trolls back in the day, probably it's why a lot of these coaches kind of just stay silent, because even if you're defending yourself and even if you're making good points, the fact that you're sort of getting in the trenches with these fans, usually you do more harm than good. But by all accounts, Dudek was a good guy. Happy he's landing at an SEC West school where he can still kind of do his thing. But for the move itself for Michigan, I think it is a good move. I think it's good to get another person in here with connections to the school. And if you're going to be making a move, I think you probably should have made it a couple months ago, just because you're probably 5-6 weeks away from having on campus visits for the first time in over a year, but couldn't wait any longer. So it's good to sort of see a move, and we'll see how quickly Michigan can sort of reap the benefits of a move like this.
So on the football recruiting side of things, as far as commitments or decommits, the news that Xavier Worthy asked out of his NLI, that came down last week. And I'm curious if you were in the position to make the call. He's asked for a release. If you felt like you were tampered with, how would you react to that? Let's say you didn't have any real tangible proof. I mean, I guess the only thing you could do is contest the release or not grant the release. How would you react if it were you? And again, I don't want to make it sound like that's the reason that they lost him, because there's a lot more to it than that. I'm just focused on that particular question because it's one that came to me last week. So I'm curious what you would do if you were in position to make that call.
Yeah, it's annoying, but I think you kind of just let it go. Obviously, you grant the release because you don't want to hold someone hostage here, and if they don't want to be here, you're probably gonna do more harm than good in terms of what's going on in the locker room. But in terms of tampering, whether a school, an unnamed school down in Austin, Texas, maybe talking to him before they should be. The reality of it is there's probably been some tampering, whether it be light or not so light. But the program right now, you've got a lot of things to concern yourself with that I'd probably just, you know what, not everyone's going to play by the rules. It is what it is, and I wouldn't waste too much time sort of fighting something like this when that time can be spent addressing other needs and concerns within the program.
Especially when I just don't have any faith. I don't have any faith at all that the NCAA would treat it with the seriousness with which they should treat something like that. When with the portal now becoming such a prevalent part of the entire process, you would think they would concern themselves more with this aspect of things than what media members have access to the portal. But that's what they're focused on. That's the first thing. Second thing is the optics of it. I mean, they are, people, media members use Jim Harbaugh, taking shots at Jim Harbaugh. It's like a pastime. So this would just be another opportunity, in my opinion, for those who are already inclined to take those shots to take them again in this instance.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think spending time talking to the NCAA to have them sick their toothless dogs on the situation where they can do absolutely nothing about it is sort of just running around in circles chasing your tail. Like you're not going to really get anything out of it. So that's a good point, and really just another check in the column of it sucks, but it is what it is, and you probably don't need to waste any more time on it.
Right. All right. So happier news, Eli Brooks is back. He was the guy that, again, as we talked about, of the guys who were in the picture for returning, Franz and Zay were not guys that anyone really thought, were seriously contemplating coming back. It was Austin Davis, Mike Smith, Shawnee Brown, and Eli. This was Eli was the one that I thought would be the toughest for them to replace. Not that I thought thinks Sean D's the most talented. I think this is the one, though, that is going to help them the most. He checks the most boxes. And I'm curious if you agree.
I completely agree. It is really you really can't understate just how huge his return is. Michigan's going to have a very young backcourt next year. There's going to be a lot of raw talent there, but not a lot of experience, not a lot of game minutes, and he can fill that in. He's got the versatility to play the one or the two. He's a great defender. He's shown that he can be a clutch shooter, and it's just next year, just the playing time he's going to be able to provide is huge. But I think it's really big in terms of the long-term health of the program too, that this team isn't going to have to basically rely on two super young guards to start next year, and you can sort of ease people in, not stunt their development by maybe having them play too much too soon and experience some sort of downfalls that might hurt their long-term development. Now they can sort of be eased in, play more of a role, kind of like what Isaiah Livers played his first year at Michigan, where he got to play as a freshman, got to play in some key minutes, and even in the national championship game, got to play in there. But hey, you're not necessarily having to start. You're not necessarily playing 30 minutes a game. So it's of the four that could come back, it's the biggest coup to sort of get Eli Brooks to be the one that comes back.
Yeah, huge move for Michigan. Looks like Illinois. Looks like their guys are going to be taking the jump. I saw the Kofi Coburn news yesterday. Also saw news out of Bloomington. Well, not out of Bloomington, but about Bloomington. And I'm curious how this struck you. That Indiana supposedly, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, offered Brad Stevens 7 years, $70 million. $70 million that they offered him, and he turned it down. And according to Woj, he hardly considered it. How embarrassing is that if you are Indiana, that a coach didn't even think twice? He didn't give you a second thought, and you were willing to pay him $10 million a year. If there's a greater sign of Indiana being a blue blood in name only, I don't know what is.
Now there is a part of me that I truly do, like, no sarcasm aside, give them credit for swinging for the fences like that. Like, not a lot of athletic departments would pony up that sort of cash to make that sort of offer, but that's the downside of making those major offers where you do swing for the fence, because you swing for the fence and you whiff, that's not just a strikeout. That's one of those strikeouts where the batter sort of falls down because he swung so hard, and he's has to walk to the dugout with his head hanging in the shade afterwards. Shows a little bit of a lack of self-awareness for that program for where they are, and to now all of a sudden you're not only the program that didn't get Brad Stevens, you're the program that offered him $70 million, the richest contract in the history of definitely college basketball, maybe college sports altogether. I'd have to check into football, but I think $10 million annually is more than any football coach is making right now. And to not only get turned down, to basically get hung up on right when the phone call comes, it's a tough pill to swallow for our friends in Bloomington.
Dude, and Ira said he's getting between $6 and $7 million a year right now. He left considerable money on the table to say no thanks. That's just wow. If you are the Indiana Hoosiers and you get that news. If you're Mike Woodson, got to be looking at what they're paying you if you're Mike Woodson, right?
And it's not like the Celtics are exactly turning up in the NBA right now. Like, some people thought this was an opportunity for him to sort of get out of a situation that's not necessarily going up to expectations how they were going. But guess we got our answer. I don't see him in Bloomington anytime soon.
Right there with you, man. I thought the same thing. That it would have been an opportunity. There are some people who say that Boston isn't living up to expectations, and here you have it, a chance to exit stage left for more money. And he said, no thanks. When we talk about your newsletter, Scott, what's in it now? Tell folks about your newsletter and how they can get it.
Yeah, so the newsletter is scottbell.substack.com. You can also just Google Scott Bell newsletter, and it's the first thing that comes up. But over the weekend, sent sort of a longer thing on a little bit what we talked about with the attrition at Michigan between Xavier Worthy stuff, Dudek leaving, and then also just sort of the disproportionate numbers in the transfer portal in terms of a lot of people leaving and not a lot of people coming in. Sort of tried to tackle the why, the will it change, some of the self-imposed roadblocks that Michigan sort of sets in front of itself, not necessarily the football program, but more the institution as a whole. So tried to tackle a lot of those issues. This coming week, I'm going to do sort of a bigger picture state of the Michigan basketball program, which was going to happen last week before all this football news came and sort of slowed that up. So one more kind of big basketball post to come, and then we'll be pivoting and recalibrating and looking ahead more to football season.
Great stuff, Scott. You can always find Scott on Twitter at sbell021. Again, at sbell021. Always a wealth of information and perspective, my friend. Thanks a lot for your time, and we will talk to you again next week.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, that's Scott Bell. Again, Scott Bell at sbell021. We call him the mayor of Michigan Twitter. We got to get to a break. Be back on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket.